When you're looking at a high-end gaming tower, the first question that usually pops up is, will this actually make a difference in my day-to-day gaming, or am I just paying for a badge? I've been in the market for a new desktop for a few months, reading forums, watching build videos, and trying to separate hype from the parts that genuinely move the needle. That's why today's review is all about the practical reality of the msi Aegis ZS2, not just a list of numbers. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Aegis ZS2 lands in a crowded segment where you can either handpick each component or go for a pre-built that promises serious performance. What makes the decision tricky is the balance between raw power and the hidden costs: noise, heat, future upgradability, and how the machine fits into a typical home setup. If you've ever bought a gaming PC that turned out to be louder than a jet engine or required a full-time cooling upgrade after a few months, you'll recognize that risk. First off, who actually benefits from this box? The Aegis is built around an AMD Ryzen 9 7900X and an NVIDIA RTX 5070, paired with 32GB of DDR5 RAM and a 2TB NVMe drive. In plain English, that means you have more than enough horsepower to run current AAA titles at 1440p with ultra settings, and you're also comfortably seated for the next generation of 4K gaming if you ever decide to add a 4K monitor. If you're a content creator who edits 4K footage, the extra cores on the Ryzen and the fast storage shave minutes off render times, making the machine feel like a real workstation, not just a gaming rig. Now, let's picture a typical use case. You fire up Cyberpunk 2077, enable ray tracing, and crank the DLSS setting to performance. The game stays above 60 frames per second on a 1440p display, and you notice hardly any stutter when you sprint into a crowded street. That smoothness is largely thanks to the RTX 5070's dedicated ray tracing cores and the Ryzen's ability to keep the CPU side-fed. If you also stream on Twitch, the extra CPU threads let you run OBS at a decent bitrate while the game stays buttery, which is something many budget builds struggle with. On the flip side, the Aegis isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. The chassis leans toward a minimalist aesthetic: clean lines, a single front vent, and a subtle MSI logo. It looks great on a desk, but the trade-off is limited internal expansion. The case only has room for one additional 2.5 inches drive and a single extra PCIe slot. If you ever plan to add a second GPU for deep learning workloads or a dedicated capture card for multi-camera streaming, you'll hit a wall. That's something you need to think about now rather than later, because retrofitting a larger case defeats the purpose of buying a pre-built. Noise is another practical concern. The Aegis uses a closed-loop liquid cooler for the CPU, which keeps temperatures low even under sustained loads. In real-world tests, the pump was audible only when the GPU hit its boost clock for extended periods, like during a marathon gaming session. Most of the time, the fans stayed under 30 dBA, which is comparable to a quiet office fan. If you have a small room or share a space with a roommate who's sensitive to background hum, this is a definite plus. However, the fans do ramp up noticeably when you push the RTX 5070 past 80W in demanding titles, so you'll still hear a faint whine during those peak moments. Thermal performance is where the liquid cooling really shines. During a 30-minute stress test in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the CPU stayed under 70°C, and the GPU hovered around 78°C. Those numbers translate to a stable gaming experience without the throttling you sometimes see on air-cooled mid-range rigs. The downside is that the liquid cooler is non-removable without opening the case, meaning you can't upgrade to a custom loop without voiding the warranty. If you're the type who loves tinkering with cooling solutions, this could feel restrictive. Value for money is where the conversation often gets fuzzy. The headline specs Ryzen 9, RTX 5070, 32GB DDR5 carry a premium price tag. Compared to building a similar spec yourself, you'll pay roughly $300 to $400 more for the pre-built convenience. That premium buys you MSI's warranty, a rear-ditto-play Windows 11 home install, and a tested, stable system out of the box. For anyone who isn't comfortable assembling components, or who needs a reliable machine immediately for work deadlines or a gaming tournament, that extra cost can be justified. On the other hand, seasoned builders who enjoy picking each part will find better bang for buck by sourcing components individually. Connectivity is worth a quick mention because it can be a deal-breaker. The Aegis includes Wi-Fi 7, which is still relatively new, but it means you have the latest wireless speeds if your router supports it. In practice, I noticed a smoother online experience in fast-paced shooters, with virtually no packet loss, even when the Wi-Fi signal wasn't perfect. The machine also offers a handful of USB-C ports, a full-size Ethernet jack, and a 3.5mm audio combo.